I'll be reading from the May 13th, 2026 issue of the Wall Street Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Thank you for joining us today. The highlights under business and finance are: consumer prices rose 3.8% in April from a year earlier, fueled by higher gasoline prices since the start of the war with Iran. Major U.S. stock indexes ended mixed after the release of the inflation data, with the S&P 500 and NASDAQ shedding 0.2% and 0.7% respectively, and the Dow rising 0.1%. eBay's board rejected GameStop's unsolicited $56 billion takeover proposal, saying the offer was neither credible nor attractive. Google is in talks with SpaceX for a rocket launch deal as the search giant expands its own efforts to put data centers in space. Sam Altman defended his leadership of OpenAI in the third week of a trial that could shape the future of artificial intelligence. Walmart said it would cut or relocate about 1,000 corporate workers as it looks to combine more of its global technology and product teams. Jack Daniel's maker Brown-Forman rejected a roughly $15 billion takeover from rival spirits maker Sazerac. Under Armour reported lower fiscal fourth quarter revenue and said it expected cost pressures and marketing investments to weigh on profit for fiscal 2027. SAP said it was rolling out a software suite to bring its data, cloud, artificial intelligence, and automation features under one roof. New venture firm Duration is looking to raise about $375 million for its first fund to invest in early-stage startups in enterprise AI. Now for the key articles under the worldwide section. Fugitive Malaysian financier Zhou Lo, the alleged mastermind of one of the greatest financial frauds in history, sought a pardon from Trump. Tehran expanded its definition of the Strait of Hormuz, signaling an intention to tighten its control of the strategic waterway. FDA Commissioner Marty McCary resigned after months of policy fights with top officials in the Health and Human Services Department and the White House. The Justice Department filed criminal charges against the operator of the ship that crashed into the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore in 2024. Mayor Zoran Mandani abandoned his proposal to increase taxes on all New York City property owners after the initiative was widely criticized. The Trump administration will name David Venturella, a former private prison company executive, as the next acting director of ICE. PayPal agreed to forego about $30 million in transaction fees to end a Justice Department probe into allegations that it adopted unlawful preferences for minority-owned businesses. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer was fighting for his job after more than 80 of his party's lawmakers publicly urged him to set a timetable for his departure. The average student loan defaulter is nearly 40 years old, almost 2.5 years older than the profile of those who stopped repaying before the pandemic. United Airlines was set to resume flights to Venezuela, preparing to offer daily nonstop service from Houston effective August 11th, subject to government approval. Died Rex Reed, 87, celebrated film critic. Jason Collins, 47, the NBA's first openly gay player. The picture on today's front page shows 5 soldiers wearing dark uniforms trimmed with gold, carrying huge red flags. And that caption reads, "An honor guard in Beijing on Tuesday. China has become more emboldened than when President Trump last visited in 2017. The article, Trump, Xi vie for wins at summit, by Ling Ling Wei, Annie Linsky, and Alexander Ward. Beijing. When President Trump touches down here on Wednesday for a 2-day summit with Xi Jinping, he will be face-to-face with the Chinese leader for the 7th time, reuniting with a man who has become a pen pal of sorts. The leaders of the world's 2 most powerful nations have corresponded through letters, according to people familiar with the practice, one of many ways that they have sought to build a personal rapport, despite long-standing tensions between Washington and Beijing, and their positions overseeing vastly different political systems. That dynamic will be put to the test during this week's summit, where the 2 leaders are expected to discuss thorny issues such as trade, Iran, and Taiwan. Publicly, Xi and Trump will seek to paper over their differences. Xi will fete Trump in grand style, giving him a tour of the Temple of Heaven, holding talks in the Great Hall of the People, hosting a state dinner for the U.S. delegation of CEOs and cabinet members, and sitting with Trump for a tea ceremony. The summit will be the first presidential visit to China since Trump traveled there nearly 9 years ago. The meeting of superpowers comes while the Iran war looms over both countries, as Trump is targeting Beijing's partners in Venezuela and Cuba, and as the U.S.-China relationship aims to recover from tit-for-tat economic brinkmanship last year. That it is even taking place as the U.S. blockades Iranian shipments of oil bound for China is extraordinary, according to analysts. Both leaders seek tangible wins. Trump, who is traveling with a delegation including Elon Musk and NVIDIA's Jensen Huang, wants China to help end the Iran war and make big purchases of U.S. products, including soybeans and Boeing aircraft. Xi, faced with a deepening economic slump at home, wants a more predictable relationship with Washington as he works to erode U.S. commitments to Taiwan. Both Trump and Xi are aligned around the desirability of stabilizing the relationship and see trade and investment as the most fruitful channel to accomplish this in the near term, said Elizabeth Economy a former Biden administration China advisor. Still, each side is trying to reduce dependence on the other without rupturing the relationship that makes both economies work. Inflation accelerated to 3.8% in April. Prices took biggest jump in 3 years with gasoline, coffee, particular pain points. By Chow Deng. Consumer prices rose 3.8% in April from a year earlier, a clear impact of higher gasoline prices since the war with Iran started, and the latest sign that Federal Reserve rate cuts are unlikely this year. The figures, reported Tuesday by the Labor Department, surpassed the previous month's reported increase of 3.3%. Economists polled by the Wall Street Journal had expected inflation of 3.7%. The April increase was the highest in 3 years. Prices, excluding food and energy categories, the so-called core measure economists watch in an effort to better capture inflation's underlying trend, rose 2.8%. That compared with forecasts for a 2.7% increase and was a pickup from 2.6% the previous month. High and rising prices have become a flashpoint for U.S. consumers who had expected the steep inflation that hit the country right after the pandemic to be off their plates by now. Price increases have been especially sharp for some items that people buy all the time, like coffee and gas. Some economists said the tariffs that President Trump announced a year ago are still slowly filtering through to some goods. But the Iran war, layered on top of that, has presented a much quicker and more obvious shock that could be hard to reverse. One MDB fugitive seeks president's pardon by Anna Maria Andriotis and C. Ryan Barber. Zhou Lo, the alleged mastermind of one of the greatest financial frauds in history, is asking President Trump for a pardon. The request was filed in recent weeks, according to people familiar with the matter, and if granted, would remove U.S. criminal charges against the fugitive Malaysian financier. A Justice Department website lists a pending request for a pardon after completion of sentence under Take Zhou Lo that was filed this year. Like all requests, Lo's chances of a pardon will ultimately rest with Trump and a team of legal advisors. A White House official said Lo's request isn't currently on the White House's radar. Lo has also been in talks with U.S. and Malaysian authorities about returning hundreds of millions of dollars tied to the 1MDB fraud, the people said. The move represents the latest gambit in the extraordinary saga of Lo, a once little-known businessman who, prosecutors said, used subterfuge, fake documents, and payoffs to engineer the heist of billions of dollars from 1MDB, a Malaysian government-owned investment vehicle set up to promote economic growth. Lo's lavish lifestyle, partying with Hollywood stars and political rulers, turned him into a symbol of global graft when it was alleged he stole his fortune. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Schools are offering a fire sale on MBAs. Purdue's Business School and others are reducing tuitions. Behind the price breaks is weaker demand for the 2-year MBA. By Ray A. Smith. One of the U.S.'s most expensive graduate degrees is going on sale. Business schools at Purdue University, Johns Hopkins University, and the University of California, Irvine, among others, are giving steep discounts on tuition that can save students tens of thousands of dollars. For professionals who are considering whether to go back to school, it can offer a pathway to get a degree while staying debt-free. But for the schools, many of which have struggled to attract applications, these discounts might not be sustainable as a business model. The price breaks tends to be for shorter, more specialized business degrees aimed at workers struggling to gain traction in a tough hiring market. Younger professionals in particular might be spooked that AI will disrupt their career plans. So business schools are pitching them that a graduate degree in business will give them an edge in AI expertise without having to step away from a high-flying career for too long or at all. Behind all of the price breaks is softening demand for the traditional 2-year MBA. Demand for that degree tends to be counter-cyclical, which means when the job market is good, people would rather stay in it and make money. In today's climate, when some professionals fear that AI will displace them, job hopping has been replaced by job hugging, and many people are clinging to the jobs they have for as long as they can. How Sweden learned to love capitalism. A shake-up of cradle-to-grave care is cutting spending and spurring innovation. By Tom Fairless, Stockholm. This paragon of collectivism is pivoting toward rugged individualism. For decades, Sweden was shorthand for the brand of high-tax, high-spend government that managed people's lives from cradle to grave through state-run hospitals, schools, and care homes. No longer. With little fanfare, this Nordic country of 11 million has embraced capitalism. Today, nearly half of primary health care clinics are privately owned, many by private equity firms. 1 in 3 public high schools is privately run, up from 20% in 2011. School operators are listed on the stock exchange. Sweden's experience has lessons, good and bad, for other rich countries, including the U.S., where New York City Mayor Zoran Mandani is looking to emulate parts of the state-centric model, such as universal child care and city-run stores. The capitalist makeover has allowed Sweden to do what few industrialized countries have managed in recent years: shrink the size of the state. That has enabled the government to sharply lower taxes, and economists say sparked a surge in entrepreneurship and economic growth. Its total public social spending bill, which includes health care, education, and all welfare payments, has fallen to 24% of gross domestic product, similar to the U.S., and well below the over 30% for nations like France and Italy. Sweden's economy is expected to grow by around 2% a year through 2030, roughly the same as the US, and double the growth rates of France and Germany, according to an April forecast by the International Monetary Fund. Sweden is a real land of opportunity, said Elizabeth Svantesson, the country's finance minister. I want people and capital to stay here and grow. While many European countries are raising taxes, Svantesson has cut them 3 years in a row. Sweden's top income tax rate has fallen close to 50% from nearly 90% in the 1980s. The slugger struggling to hit homers. Fernando Tatis Jr.'s home run drought has emerged as one of the biggest mysteries of the Major League Baseball season, by Jared Diamond. When the San Diego Padres signed Fernando Tatis Jr. to a $340 million contract extension in 2021, they thought they were locking in a superstar to serve as their franchise cornerstone for more than a decade. He had just turned 22, came with otherworldly talent, and seemed poised to become one of baseball's most devastating sluggers. But now, 5 years later, the Padres have a much more modest goal. They just want to see Tatis send a ball over the fence one single time. Entering Tuesday's actions, 349 different Major League players had produced at least one home run this season. Tatis, inexplicably, isn't one of them. There were only 2 others who had come up to bat more than 150 times without connecting on a homer. Tampa Bay Rays outfielder Chandler Simpson and San Francisco Giants infielder Luis Alvarez, a pair of well-established slap hitters whose entire approaches at the plate revolve around specifically not hitting the ball into the air. That decidedly doesn't apply to Tatis. He led the National League with 42 homers as recently as 2021. Though he has never again reached those heights, he received an 80-game suspension after testing positive for performance-enhancing drugs in 2022. He has averaged about 24 homers in the 3 years since returning. Tatis is a known tinkerer who frequently changes his stance and approach when he's feeling uncomfortable. He says he is regularly taking extra batting practice in an effort to figure out what is wrong with his swing. Leaving the front page for other articles within the paper. Iran expands straight definition, by Chelsea Delaney and Salah El-Badadi. Iran said it has significantly expanded its definition of the Strait of Hormuz, signaling its intent to widen its grip on the crucial waterway that was effectively closed to global shipping by Iranian attacks at the start of the conflict. Mohammed Akbarzadeh, an official with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Naval Forces, said Tehran now considers the Strait of Hormuz to encompass a much larger area than before the war. Akbarzadeh said Iran would not allow any kind of encroachment upon its waters and interest. In the past, the Strait of Hormuz was defined as a limited area around islands such as Hormuz and Hengam, but today this has changed, Akbarzadeh said. according to Iranian state broadcaster Press TV. Iran now considers the strait to stretch hundreds of miles from the coast of Jask to the greater Tomb Island, he said. The Strait of Hormuz has grown larger and has turned into a vast operational area, he said. In Washington, General Dan Kane, the chair of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, said Tehran's attacks on commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz is a case where Iran is choosing to hold the world's economy hostage, sidestepping a question from lawmakers on Capitol Hill about whether the situation in the strategic waterway indicates that the U.S. has lost the war. I would encourage Iran to reconsider that, and I would encourage those allies and partners who have an opportunity to come assist with that tactical problem to do so, Kane said Tuesday. One-time New York hellhole becomes hot office district by Peter Grant. The neighborhood surrounding Manhattan's Penn Station is notorious for its grime, panhandling, and claustrophobic train station. New York Governor Kathy Hochul called the station a hellhole. But the area is improbably emerging as one of the hottest office markets in New York City. New tenants are flocking to the Penn Station area, including Major League Soccer and Dick's Sporting Goods. The neighborhood's rising occupancy rates and rents reflect New York's strength as the nation's leading office market, as well as the growing premium on proximity to transportation hubs for workers increasingly opposed to extensive commutes. Space data centers face lots of challenges by Micah Maidenberg and Meryl Sherman. NVIDIA recently posted a job straight out of a science fiction epic. Orbital Data Center System Architect. The chip maker and other technology giants are working to take an idea that has captivated futurists, channeling the sun's power through spacecraft to support activity on Earth, and make it reality for artificial intelligence computing. Elon Musk has recast much of SpaceX's future around operating AI data centers in space. Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin envisions building a big business doing the same, while Alphabet's Google and Planet Labs are working on a mission to test how satellites would run AI computing system. Proponents say offloading computing to orbit will allow AI developers to scale up the technology without the headaches they are facing on Earth, including efforts to ban data centers. Operating orbital data centers will require engineers and executives to make advancements in everything from handling radiation to rockets. A big part of the challenge is producing and launching scores of devices without breaking the bank. Some engineers don't believe the math works, and big questions remain unanswered. Data centers on the ground feature racks of servers in cavernous, temperature-controlled buildings. Orbital data centers will feature swarms of satellites laden with AI chips. They will need solar arrays to produce electricity to run the AI computing systems. The satellites are expected to fly in an orbit that roughly travels over Earth's poles to maximize their exposure to sunlight. Satellites have been run on solar power for decades. Satellites for AI would need to take that tech and replicate it on a much larger scale. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. From the editorial page, The Civic Life Success at UNC. The faculty hated the idea, but now it's getting a promotion on campus. One path to reforming higher education is to develop alternatives to current institutions, and an option gaining steam is for universities to do so within their own gates. An example is the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, which is announcing this week that the School of Civic Life and Leadership, SCILL, is becoming an independent school within the university. We told readers about the controversy when the UNC Board of Trustees, supported by the state legislature, created the new program in 2023 amid faculty protest. The founders have been vindicated, as the program has since been in high student demand, with nearly 1,000 students now taking classes at SCILL, up from 85 in the fall of 2024 academic year. The school has 30 faculty members and is developing a major, a master's program, and a PhD program on American political thought and constitutionalism to supplement the growing work with undergrads. The number of students declaring a SCILL minor increased 90% in the second semester this year. Bringing the initiative out of the College of Arts and Sciences is a vote of confidence from UNC leaders, despite organized pushback from faculty and outside critics. A 2023 letter published in the UNC student newspaper, the Daily Tar Heel, and signed by hundreds of UNC faculty, said state leaders were seeking to force students' educations into pre-approved ideological containers. Not quite. The school is an antidote to the progressive ideological conformity that dominates the UNC faculty. The civics movement in higher education is growing across the country, with more than 45 centers at 41 institutions in 25 states, according to a report by Heterodox Academy, which supports an open inquiry on campus. Civics centers are thriving at the University of Florida, Hamilton School for Classical and Civic Education, University of Texas, Austin, School of Civic Leadership, Arizona State University, School of Civic and Economic Thought and Leadership, and Ohio State, Salmon B. Chase Center, among others. Much of the energy is coming from public universities, and state lawmakers have done good work with efforts to expand viewpoint diversity and civil debate. The Heterodox report notes that 22 centers were founded between 2022 and 2025, and 59% of them were created by state legislation. Universities can strengthen the programs by allowing civic classes to fulfill core requirements for the general student population as well. The next wave could come at private universities, where most students are still obliged to marinate in progressive faculty monocultures. Yale, the University of Chicago, and Columbia have civics programs on campus, but some programs tend more toward community organizing than alternative ideas and debate. The recent spectacle of students shouting down Homeland Security General Counsel James Percival at UCLA Law School shows the habits of cancel culture haven't gone away. But if students can learn to debate the people they disagree with and still work together, they will be prepared for life in a robust democracy, and they will have acquired skills their families sent them to college to learn in the first place. From the opinion pages, asking Ukraine to save Putin. Pressure for a deal increasingly smells like pressure to rescue the regime in Moscow. By Holman W. Jenkins, Jr. A reasonably foreseeable moment has arrived. Ukraine has no reason to be torn over whether to trade land for peace, at least the land Russia has already occupied. This is the deal the Trump administration has urged on Ukraine and the Biden administration signaled earlier. But now, if asked again to make concessions to Russia, Ukraine might be asked, in essence, to serve as the instrument of Vladimir Putin's salvation. Yes, they quietly exist in the U.S. government and even more in European governments, especially in the Baltics and Eastern Europe. You can expect to hear their whispering soon. I'm referring to NATO officials and Western leaders who believe the way to solve the Putin problem once and for all is to let the war continue, who say a stiff price should be extorted from Russia before it's allowed to exit its war. With due caution, a turning point has announced itself in recent days. Russia, in fear of Ukrainian drones, was reduced to hiding its strategic and heavy military equipment during Saturday's all-important Victory Day parade, commemorating a war, it's worth recalling, that Stalin helped Hitler start. Mr. Putin appealed to Donald Trump to lean on Kyiv for a temporary ceasefire. Never mind that Mr. Putin could provide his own ceasefire by stopping a war he started. In a coup of its own, a Western intelligence agency got CNN and Financial Times to report, implausibly, on a document hinting that a coup might be in the offing by Kremlin beta figure and Putin crony Sergei Shoigu. Mr. Putin's problem isn't Mr. Shoigu. It's a general mood of exhaustion with Mr. Putin himself and his obsessive war that can't be made to fall out of a fourth-story window. For the first time, Mr. Putin suggested to the global press on Saturday that the war was coming to an end. He named former German Chancellor and Russian energy lobbyist Gerhard Schroeder as the ideal mediator, implausible, but a way of hinting Europe should forget the Ukraine war ever happened and start buying Russian gas again. More importantly, such talk means out the window has gone the long-brooded suggestion, mainly for Western ears, of a general Russian mobilization to win the war for good. Mr. Putin would finally draft the unwilling Russian majority into his slaughter, which is currently manned by paid volunteers. The polite term for criminals, deadbeats, and unfavored rural sons sent by their families to die so the ancestral hovel can get a new roof or kitchen appliances. In 4 years of war, nothing has been more upchuck producing than Mr. Putin's habit of referring to these sacrificial drones as the guys, as if only his presidential duties stopped him from joining his mates and pals on the front line. The truth is, he was never going to risk his regime by making his urban elite participate in this failing war. Now the very threat has dissolved as Russia is burning through its current victim recruits faster than it can replace them, with no solution in sight as long as Mr. Putin keeps insisting on Potemkin offensives to maintain an illusion of military progress on the ground. This means the war is effectively over in the sense that one big push from the Russian side to win is no longer even imaginable. 2 years ago, the West trembled on the brink of a strategy to turn the war around, promoting long-range Ukrainian strikes to take advantage of Russia's vast expanse, impossible to defend against drone and missile attack. Today, talk about whether Ukraine should be allowed to join NATO has been supplanted by talk about whether NATO will be allowed to join Ukraine, whose fighting experience and surging domestic defense industry wouldn't just be an asset to the Western alliance, but a pillar of it. Mr. Putin's own performance in this light has been so poor, or his success in achieving the opposite of his every aim has been so fantastic, that it's not unrealistic to ask whether Ukraine will be pressured to sign a deal to save his job for him. In this moment, what should we be thinking of Mr. Trump's role? Many would have preferred a passionate defender of Ukraine to Mr. Trump's adopted stance as neutral mediator, even as the U.S. kept selling weapons to Kyiv and providing actionable military intelligence. His most hack-like critics claim to find one constancy in the otherwise inconstant Mr. Trump: devotion to the interest of Mr. Putin. The evidence never supported such a storyline, but the availability of a large online audience still trying to justify its collusion delusions did. Whether and how surface ruffles, like his made-for-TV fight with Ukraine's president early in his second term, might have served or undermined his drive for opportunistically useful outcomes, useful for Mr. Trump, will be for historians to work out. The record may look better to posterity than it does to Mr. Trump's contemporaries. Seattle turns hostile to the great businesses it made. Starbucks is moving jobs from Washington State to Tennessee, and it isn't alone in looking elsewhere. By Howard Schultz. Washington State has been my home for more than 4 decades. I arrived in Seattle with dreams and ambition and ended up building Starbucks into a company known around the world. Many Pacific Northwesterners joined me in shaping the culture, benefits, and brand of Starbucks, contributing not only to a business, but also the civic and entrepreneurial life of the area. I am no longer a resident of Washington. My decision to leave had much to do with family choices and my stage of life. Still, I feel a responsibility to speak up about the business and job climate in a city and state that gave me so many opportunities. Washington's economic story over the past half century is extraordinary. Microsoft, Amazon, Costco, and a host of other new companies transformed the state into a global center of technology, innovation, and logistics. Entrepreneurs explored ideas worldwide. Capital flowed. Wages rose. Imported and homegrown talent flourished. That ecosystem worked because risk taking was rewarded, growth was possible, and civic leadership, while imperfect, understood that private enterprise wasn't the adversary of the public good. It was one engine for improving the public sphere. That ecosystem is fractured today. Seattle and much of Washington face serious problems: chronic homelessness, disorder in core business districts, persistent budget deficits, declining public school outcomes, and a slowing technology hiring cycle. These challenges aren't unique to the state, but Washington's response to them is. Seattle's Mayor Katie Wilson has chosen to cast business as a foil rather than a partner. Her socialist rhetoric vilifies employers, even while she continues to rely on them for revenue. She has encouraged residents who disagree with her politics to leave. In the state capitol, the legislature and governor have confronted difficult fiscal trade-offs by emphasizing taxation rather than reform or performance management. The theory appears to be that prosperity can be mandated through redistribution rather than generated through growth. Washington has a broken tax system. The reliance on sales taxes, 10.55% in Seattle, is deeply regressive. The state needs to rewrite its tax code across the board in a way that ensures people and businesses alike pay their share. But instead of reform, those in power have opted to increase the burden on businesses and successful entrepreneurs in ways that discourage them from growing within the state, at a moment when Washington's economic situation is growing more fragile. Microsoft and Amazon, once hiring engines, have slowed recruitment and reduced headcounts as they race to build data center capacity and compete globally. Starbucks recently announced it will shift hundreds of corporate roles to Tennessee. These companies imported global talent at scale for decades, anchoring an interconnected system of suppliers and startups. As those businesses reduce their local role, Seattle has no clear answer to the question of what will provide the next set of jobs and revenue growth. Cities and states don't decline overnight. They drift when public safety, fiscal stability, and economic vitality deteriorate together. Downtown vacancies reduce foot traffic. Declining foot traffic weakens small businesses. Employment falls. Revenue shrinks. Services erode. Confidence, something that's hard to build and easy to lose, begins to evaporate. Entrepreneurs are accustomed to accountability. If we fail to deliver value, we lose customers. If we misallocate capital, we absorb the loss. Government, too, should be judged by results, not intentions. In Washington, steadily increasing government spending hasn't delivered commensurate results on a range of issues, from addressing homelessness and drug addiction to poor prospects for new high school graduates. Entrepreneurs take risks others won't. We build before certainty exists. We hire before revenue is guaranteed. We invest locally, pay taxes, and support civic institutions. When our companies succeed, entire regions benefit. America can't afford to forget that. Leaving doesn't mean abandoning. My family foundation remains invested in Washington's future, seeking to help the next generation achieve economic mobility and prosperity. But that future is linked to economic growth and job creation. Across the country, other states are competing for capital and talent by simplifying regulation, reforming tax systems, and investing in workforce development. One important initiative comes from the bipartisan National Governors Association, helping states craft pro-entrepreneurships policies. I hope Washington's leaders will embrace these policies and forge a new compact, one grounded in job creation, sensible taxation, and accountable public spending. Washington once embodied the future of the U.S. economy, and it can again. But the current government needs to learn that future entrepreneurs won't be attracted by ineffective public systems, especially when joined with policy and political rhetoric that demonizes businesses. Mr. Schultz is a former CEO and chairman emeritus of Starbucks. Mandani can make moms into millionaires. How to redirect the money New York City wastes on its failing public school system. By Jeff Yass, New York. I have great news for Mayor Zoran Mandani. I am here to solve your affordability crisis. I want to show you one of the most advanced mathematical concepts we use in finance. It is called long division. We are very divided by division. Some of us use it, some of us don't. The cost: New York City spends roughly $37 billion a year to educate about 850,000 children. The math: that's over $42,000 per child per year. The results: abysmal. 2/3 of fourth graders can't do math problems properly, and almost 3/4 can't read at grade level. You don't have to be an expert in fractions to know that is bad. Let's agree that the political reality is we can't reduce the amount of public education spending at all. Fine. What can we do? Direct vouchers. Tell every mom in New York City that the $42,000 currently spent on that terrible education is going to be her money. The split: we're going to give her half, $21,000. Every year she will receive that as a voucher for her child to attend whatever school she chooses. The investment: we are going to take the other $21,000 and put it in a real account for which her child is the sole beneficiary. If it returns a paltry 2% over the next 13 years, that child will graduate high school with $300,000, enough for college, trade school, or a down payment on a home. Give $300,000 to a graduate who can read, write, and do math, and adios affordability crisis. No more need for $30 million government grocery stores, free buses, or rent control. This solution is such an obvious win that I'm confident Mr. Mandani, once he hears this, will agree and change the policy. But seriously, think again about what I just said. Properly understood, every mother of two in this city is already a millionaire. Over the 13 years we spend to educate her two kids, we spend more than $1 million for results that are a national shame. The school choice movement should tell that mom she is a millionaire and we are going to give her the money so she can control her destiny. One side says, here's $1 million, but the teachers' union is going to take it from you, give it to its friends, create jobs, spend it on politics, and give you a low-quality education. The other side says, the $1 million is yours. $21,000 for education, $300,000 when you graduate. The reason something like this doesn't happen in New York is political opposition. The people in charge are not interested in solving the problem, they just want power. Our public education system isn't about education, it is a jobs program for the teachers' union. Mr. Yass is managing director and co-founder of Susquehanna International Group. This is adapted from his speech accepting the Manhattan Institute's Alexander Hamilton Award on May 6th. Letter to the editor, American agriculture can lower fuel prices. In an ethanol extortion play, the Wall Street Journal editorial board makes a campaign to pass legislation that would allow for the year-round sales of fuels with 15% ethanol blends, often referred to as E15. Sound as if it is orchestrated by a sinister group? In reality, the ethanol lobby is people like me, a farmer from Ohio who wants a market for his crop, fuel savings for consumers, and homegrown energy security for our country. In locations where E15 is available, drivers routinely save 10 to 30 cents a gallon. The legislation would expand driver access to E15 when gas prices today average $4.52 a gallon compared to $3.13 a gallon a year ago. The legislation provides a market-based opportunity for corn farmers and has been endorsed by the American Petroleum Institute. From Jeff Bauer, National Corn Growers Association, Washington Courthouse, Ohio. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the May 13th, 2026 issue of the Wall Street Journal. We read from the Wall Street Journal every Monday through Thursday at 11 p.m. Your reader has been Corrine. Thank you for listening.